I know many people, when they're trying to heal from the trauma of narcissistic abuse, will have some kind of pain, normally manifesting in things like autoimmune disorders. So there are many, many people that I know who have fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, or other forms of autoimmune disorders. And when we start to look at pinpointing when they started, there often seems to be a definite trauma element. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that every single person in the world who has an autoimmune disorder has trauma, but there is definitely a growing body of evidence to suggest that autoimmune disorders are really our bodies going inwards on ourselves when we're producing a huge amount of cortisol unnecessarily longer than we need to. This is producing inflammation within the body, leading to autoimmune disorders, particularly with autoimmune disorders like fibromyalgia, where there's no definitive test for fibromyalgia. It's really a series of questions looking at your symptoms and then giving that diagnosis. So we have this chronic illness that we now have a label on because you're suffering with things like pain, tiredness, and then we label that as fibromyalgia. And many people feel stuck with these diagnoses for the rest of their life. And something that I'm really passionate about through my own journey to heal from the trauma of narcissistic abuse is really to start to look at the root cause of why we're suffering with things in the first place. And this is where I geek out about everything and really try and understand, what's going on in our body, what's happening at our nervous system level, so we can start to understand why we show up the way that we do on any given moment. If we're not in actual danger, we're actually safe. Why does our body go into a fight, flight, or freeze if we're actually safe? Yes, it's a challenging time. And let's be honest, if we're with a narcissist, the word challenge doesn't even cut it, does it? But we're often still actually safe. It's not actually life-threatening situations. Now, in the work that I do, I use a therapy called internal family systems. This, I have to say, revolutionized how I saw myself and indeed how I see others. I teach IFS-informed coaching certifications around this. And for me, it's just something that really, really made sense to me. It really helped me understand. And one of the main reasons why it really, really interested me was because it was evidence-based. And there was a research article about rheumatoid arthritis being a protector part. My mum was suffering with rheumatoid arthritis literally from her early to mid 30s up until she passed away in 2009. And, she ended up with titanium rods in her wrist, and it really, really blighted her life. And as an empath, being around my mum, I'd often have conversations with her about going to a pain clinic or getting out more and doing stuff. But she never ever did. And I really felt like my mum's life was so insular, racked with pain. She was living with my dad. She absolutely lived to be a mom, and then her grandchildren, my two, and one of my sisters has a son as well. And that was really where her sense of worth came from. This got me really, really interested when I was looking at IFS, seeing so many people as well in my community as I was working with them, suffering with pain, autoimmune disorders. Now, the premise of IFS is that we all have a sense of self. There's a kind of true self, authentic self, whatever you want to call that, an essence of who we all are that have traits of things like curiosity and compassion, creativity, confidence. And when we're coming from that place of self, our self energy, it means that we're not being dictated to and triggered by potential traumas. We're actually feeling safe enough just to be ourselves in the present moment. Now, what often happens for many of us in our childhood, we will interpret and perceive other people's behaviors and events in a certain way. As children, we're very egocentric. Everything revolves around us, good and bad. So if someone treats us in a certain way as a child, we will bring that back to ourselves and think, hey, that's because of me. My parents are getting a divorce because of me. I'm being bullied at school because of me. And it doesn't really then start to matter what other people are telling you. Trauma literally gets wired in at a nervous system level. It's literally stuck inside our body. So we will perceive other people's behavior as a reflection of ourselves. This kind of creates what we call an exile wound in internal family systems. So think of it like an inner child wound. That little version of yourself thinking, oh my goodness, this is happening because I'm not good enough or I'm worthless. That creates a core emotional wound. And as human beings, we're driven by survival to move us away from feeling any pain. So we then have what's called protector parts showing up for us to constantly distract and soothe us away from what our nervous system feels is, the biggest pain that we could possibly feel. It's like our version of being attacked. Our brain, our mind, our body needs to do everything it possibly can not to go back to feel that pain, because that literally felt the most deepest pain we could ever feel. Even though we are actually safe, our neocortex, that front part of the brain, starts to overanalyze, and we start to add our own version of logic to something that we are feeling. It's because of me. That starts to wire in and starts to create them patterns of behavior, relationships we attract as we get older. Now, we all have these protector parts of us. So if we're not coming from a place of our true self, that essence of who we are, and we're showing up in our everyday life, even right now, and see if you can relate to some of these protector parts that are actually protector parts: procrastination, perfectionism, people pleasing, high achieving, self-harm, dissociation, addictions, eating disorders. All of these are actually protector parts, because in the moment, either on a continual daily basis or in the moment where we're actually feeling that pain, the protector parts will come in and try and support us with the bestest of intentions for us. The problem being is it's often destructive for us as well, and stopping us from moving forward. Now, pain can be an incredible protector part for us. Think about it. If you're in a relationship with a narcissist, the narcissist is likely triggering some core wound in yourself about maybe not feeling good enough, for example. Now, whenever you felt that as that child, that would have felt really painful. So everything becomes driven for you as a child not to feel that pain. Even as the adult, it's literally stuck in your system. So even though many people like myself, we kind of know we're good enough, our body tells that different story, because we're reacting if somebody else behaves in a certain way that potentially could mean, oh, maybe we're not good enough. So what happens is pain as a protector part can come up because your nervous system thinks, what's more painful here? Sitting in the pain of fibromyalgia, or sitting in the pain of feeling like a 6-year-old little girl not feeling good enough? I mean, let's be honest, neither of them are good. Neither of them are nice. But the nervous system automatically will think, well, the pain of that little girl, that's going to be too painful. So pain can be an incredibly positive protector part to distract you away from what your nervous system believes would be your worst pain that you could possibly feel. However, it's not nice, is it? Living day in and day out in pain. And this is why many chronic illnesses like fibromyalgia come from us producing excess cortisol longer than we actually need to produce it. And lots of things start to happen in the body, leading to inflammation. And obviously, inflammation means pain, because it's pressing on all of our nerve endings. And how do we get rid of inflammation then? Well, whenever I'm working with any of my clients, I'm always looking at how much of the pain that they are suffering with, because we look at everything as protector parts. We don't look at diagnoses, we look at protector parts. So if someone has pain, we treat it as a protector part. It's there to distract away from something else. Now, that doesn't mean that even if we worked on that protector part, that you may still not be in pain. Because of course, what can happen on a long-term basis when you're suffering with chronic illness is there can actually be physical changes. So for instance, to joints. So if I'm thinking, say, of my mum with rheumatoid arthritis, for instance, if I'd have been able to do this work with her maybe in her 30s, what may have happened was we could have minimized the physical damage that then happened to her joints. But of course, over the years, when the rheumatoid arthritis was absolutely prevalent through her system, then that led obviously to some really awful things happening to her joints, culminating in her actually having 2 titanium rods in her joints, in her wrist joints at one stage as well. But when I look at her life and the pain from her childhood, her marriage to my father, I completely see the pain as a different element for her now. There I was trying to take the pain away from her as this empath and her daughter. I hated seeing my mum in pain. It was awful. The physical pain, turning a tap on. I mean, it was just awful watching that. But I feel a real difference of a sense of why that pain was there. Of course, I would have loved to work with her so she wasn't in any pain at all, emotional and physical. But this is why when I'm working with my clients, we're looking at how much of this is down to emotional pain and how much of this is actually down to physical pain then as well. And the number of people that I have worked with now who are suffering with things like autoimmune disorders, we notice, I mean, in some cases, it completely gone. And very often we can really bring down that pain scale for them as well. And this is by working deep. What we want to do is really get to know those protector parts. Protector parts want to be heard, not pushed away. You know, I know often we're like, don't want to feel like this. I hear you. I get it. But those protector parts are actually there with a positive intention for you, and they want to be heard. Normally, our protector parts aren't protecting you as the adult you are today. They're protecting an inner child who was in pain at a particular time. So just like you, if you have your children, you're not going anywhere if your kids are in pain, right? Same as those protector parts. Those protector parts need to understand that you are an adult now and that your interpretation of that wasn't correct, which means that when, instead of just knowing you're good enough, we can go back and change the somatic experience of what you have been through. So you now feel good enough. That really, really minimizes the core emotional wound, meaning those protector parts don't need to show up quite so robustly to minimize the pain that you are feeling. So it's a whole process that we go through. And I use a lot of somatic experiencing this. So we're just really processing very slowly through the body to integrate that, working with those parts, you know, because if you have a pain part right now, if you had to ask that pain part, how does it think you would feel or cope if it wasn't there? What would it say? Now, I know many of you are going to go, oh, it would be great. I wouldn't feel any pain. You wouldn't as yourself. I hear you. But that protector part that is there clearly thinks it needs to be there for you to distract you away from feeling something else. That's the first step to start to get curious about all of that too. So really, I wanted to do this podcast really for you to start to get to know your own pain part. Maybe think of it now as a protector part. If you thought of your pain rather than a diagnosis, think of it as pain. If you had to think of your pain as a protector part, have a conversation with it, externalize it. What would it say? And of course, still keep on continuing to see your healthcare providers in all of this. I'm such an advocate of conventional medicine as well when it is needed. But I want you to be an advocate for your own health as well. I want you to get curious about what you have. Think of it as a protector part and work with it like this, because so often we get this diagnosis, we get medication, and then we're on it for the rest of our life. And often that can be a part in itself. I want you to get curious. I want you to be an advocate for yourself, because let's get to the root cause of all of this so that you can start to see, maybe if you're a 9 out of 10 on that pain scale, what if we could get you down to a 3 out of 10? Just think what your life would look like, because maybe that could be possible for you as well. And the narcissist really, really highlights, you know, so many of our internal wounds, meaning that pain part needs to work even stronger. So very often then when we're in relationships with a narcissist, or we've got that post-separation abuse, for instance, we're in even more physical pain because that pain part's like, I cannot have you feeling like this. I need to make you feel even more pain. So again, it may even mean you might be thinking, well, hey, I'm still in pain and I'm out of the relationship. It's still the narcissist has triggered those core wounds as well. So let me know, can you relate to that? How does it feel thinking about less about diagnosis, but pain as a protector part? Do you feel any other parts coming up? Maybe anger, because you have this pain to protect you from a core wound. Remember, anger is another protector part, all while your system's working really hard for you not to feel something that it thinks would be too painful for you to feel. Do make sure you keep following me over on Instagram and on TikTok, where I do reels every single day, videos that will go out, just little snippets for you, just to help give you hope and light along the way, bits of education, because I know what it's like. I've been exactly where you are and I know what it's like. So please make sure you come on over and follow me, drop me a message. You know, you can always email me, drop me a DM. We always try and reply to every single person that drops us a message, just to support, or just to, you know, maybe it's one of my programs or my membership, or just come and join my free group. Just come and be in a community where you feel like you're not on your own. So take care, everybody. Your goal for this week is to get to know your pain protector part, externalize it, get to know it. Try and talk to it from a place of self. So you have a self to part relationship. What does that part think would happen if it wasn't there for you? Not what you think, what would the part think? What is the pain trying to distract you away from feeling? What's your core emotional wound? Take care. I hope that was really interesting for you. I love, love, love talking about this stuff. I love this element around the somatic side, the healing side of trauma and narcissistic abuse, because it's so misunderstood. It's not talked about enough. Very often people are just slapped with a diagnosis of things, and it's so much more than that. Be an advocate for yourself, and let me help you move from post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth after narcissistic abuse, because it is possible. I assure you, it is possible. Wherever you are right now, it is possible. Take care, my friends, and I'll see you on the next episode.